Before we start talking about the value of this painting, I should probably tell you what I've done since I brought it home. The first thing I did was remove that old picture light that was screwed directly into the back of the frame. That was a fairly common thing back in the day, especially in more traditional interiors. But it doesn't really work today, and honestly, I don't think it was doing the painting any favors. There are better ways of lighting and oil painting now. You can pinpoint spots. You can get some LED lighting over the top if you want, but that was kind of definitely vintage, but not helpful. The painting had also been sitting in a vintage store for about 5 years. So it had accumulated a fair amount of dust and general wear and tear, especially on the frame. So the next thing I did was a very light cleaning. I used a framer's brush, or you can call it a draftsman's brush, to remove dust from both the front and the back of the painting, all across it. Then I very gently cleaned the surface of the painting using a damp cloth. And I mean damp, not wet, and no detergents, no solvents, nothing aggressive. Oil paintings are pretty durable, especially older ones, and they can handle a light cleaning without any damage to the surface. And I didn't want to risk disturbing that paint surface in any way other than that damp cloth. The frame itself also had a few small scuffs and areas of wear. And it isn't surprising given its age. I think this painting was probably made 1960, 1970 area. So I used a little gold finger, what we call gold finger. Like this, just a little paste. Put a little bit on your finger and just go over where those scuffs, and like magic, they've disappeared. And finally, the canvas itself was lifting slightly along a few edges of the stretcher. So I secured it back to the stretcher using framer's tape to help stabilize it. Nothing extreme. Just basic conservation and preservation work to clean it up and help preserve it properly. And now that it's been cleaned, stabilized, and presented properly, I think it's ready for a much closer look. So who exactly was Harold Frank? Harold Frank was an American abstract expressionist painter associated with the Southern California modernist movement. Born in Southampton, England in 1917, he immigrated to the United States through Ellis Island as a child and was raised in New York. His formal art education was extensive. He studied at the National Academy of Design, the Art Students League, the Pratt Institute, the Chouinard Art Institute, and UCLA. After World War II, Frank traveled to Paris to study European modernism before eventually settling in Los Angeles. Over the course of his career, his work was exhibited internationally in London, Paris, Amsterdam, Switzerland, and also some major American art centers. He also received a number of important awards, including the Adolph and Clara Obrig Prize from the National Academy of Design, the John Marin Memorial Award, the Grumbacher Award, and first prize at the Laguna Beach Museum of Art. Today, Harold Frank is remembered as a significant figure in California modernism and post-war American abstract expressionism, particularly for his fluid brushwork, raw energy, and distinctive expressionist style. So Charlie's decided to join us now, my co-host. Now, Harold Frank was primarily known for his figurative expressionist work. But during my research, I discovered that floral still lifes were absolutely part of his broader body of work. And this painting immediately stands out for several reasons. First is condition. The painting itself is exceptionally strong condition. The canvas remains professionally stretched. The paint appears stable, and there are no obvious signs of major restoration or damage. Very tight in the stretcher, and I don't see any marks. And by the way, by touching it, I could tell you that this is an oil painting. If it was an acrylic painting, and sometimes Frank worked in acrylic, there would be a satin sheen to it. But this is not. This is not that. It's oil, because it feels a little bit dry and a little bit rough, which is a real good indicator of an oil painting. The colors remain vibrant, particularly in the cool blue background, which gives the piece a surprisingly contemporary feel. It feels like it maybe was painted yesterday. The frame is also a major factor here. It's a substantial period gilt frame that complements the work beautifully and materially enhances its presentation and appeal. Then there's the signature. The H. Frank signature appears very convincing. The angular construction of the letters and the way the K has that curl in it at the top is consistent with known examples of Frank's signature. Now let's compare it to several Harold Frank floral works currently visible online. The first example appeared on eBay. At first glance, it seemed relevant, but when we examined it more closely, important differences became obvious. That work appeared to be under glass, likely indicating a work on paper or board rather than a stretched oil on canvas. The back construction also suggested cardboard backing rather than a professional stretcher. It was additionally smaller than our painting. So while the eBay listing confirms that Harold Frank florals circulate in the secondary market, it's not directly comparable. Next, we looked at two floral listings on First Dibs. Both of those paintings were also smaller than ours and were executed in oil or acrylic on paper rather than on stretched canvas. However, these listings are very important because they confirm something very significant. Harold Frank floral still lifes are recognized and accepted within the artist's known body of work. And then we found the strongest comparable, a gallery listing that showed a Harold Frank floral oil on canvas measuring 16 by 20 inches that reportedly sold for $6,500. That particular comparison becomes very important because our painting is larger, more visually commanding, housed in a stronger frame, and arguably possesses greater decorative and interior design appeal. In fact, among all the examples we were able to find online, this appears to be the largest Harold Frank floral example we could find. Now there's one important limitation we also need to discuss: provenance. The dealer stated that the painting came from a... Chica, you can't do that. Let's move on. The dealer stated that the painting came from a Los Angeles estate and had been in her possession for approximately 5 years. 5 years, that's right. That history is entirely plausible given Harold Frank's long connection to the Southern California art world. But from a strict valuation standpoint, the provenance remains limited. And that matters because provenance affects confidence, right? So where does all this leave us in terms of value? From an auction standpoint, meaning realistic secondary market conditions, the painting would likely fall into the approximate range of $2,500 to $4,000. For gallery retail, however, the picture changes considerably based on that painting we saw in that gallery. Because of the painting's large scale, excellent condition, and convincing signature, I believe most gallerists would attribute this, would not even attribute it, they would just say it's by Harold Frank. A serious gallery or designer-oriented setting could reasonably place the work in the range of approximately $6,500 to $9,500. And for insurance or replacement purposes, a valuation in the range of approximately $8,500 maybe as high as $10,000, would not be unreasonable. So ultimately, this painting occupies a very interesting position. Its primary weakness is simply the absence of documented provenance. But it compares very favorably and in several respects superior to many of the Harold Frank examples currently visible on the internet. So Charlie, what do you think?
Dad, I'm really glad you bought this painting because now we're not going to be divorce survivors.
What makes you say that?
I'd really miss Mom.
Why do you think you'll be going with him?
You may not be going with me. Happy hunting, everybody. See you next time. Good boy. If you've been seeing this book and wondering who it's from, my name is John Sumner. I've spent a long time in the art world as a dealer, an appraiser, and as a working artist. I wrote a no-nonsense guide to buying art because I've seen how confusing and intimidating buying art can feel, even for people who genuinely love it. This book isn't about trends, and it's not about telling you what to buy. It's about learning how to look at art with a bit more confidence and trusting your own taste instead of second-guessing yourself. If that sounds helpful, you'll find the book in the link below. And if it's not for you, that's completely fine too.